Ancient mariners once crossed oceans using only the wind and stars. Their greatest secret was not a map, but a profound understanding of the monsoon. This video will show you how to recreate 30 monsoon experiments in your own backyard to finally crack the code behind their most critical sailing decisions. We will explore how these sailors could predict storms without technology and why certain ship designs vanished into history. You will learn to think like a master navigator by the end of this journey. How does the past speak to us through the wind? These seasonal winds carved the pathways of history itself. For civilizations like the Phoenicians and the Austronesians, the monsoon was not a force to be battled, but a partner to be understood. Its predictable rhythm, reversing direction with the turning of the seasons, became the world's first scheduled maritime highway. A ship captain in ancient India knew that the summer winds would carry his vessel laden with spices westward to Africa and Arabia. He also knew with equal certainty that the winter winds would bring him home. This was not random travel. It was a meticulously planned operation on a colossal scale. Entire economies were built around this annual cycle. Ports would swell with activity in the months leading up to a departure, with merchants, sailors, and craftsmen all synchronizing their lives to the whisper of the coming winds. The arrival of a trading fleet was not just an economic event, it was a cultural transfusion. Ideas, religions, technologies, and art flowed across the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea alongside silks and gemstones, all carried on these invisible, seasonal rivers of air. This deep, symbiotic relationship is why ancient mariners became the world's first master meteorologists. Their survival, their wealth, their very connection to the wider world depended on reading the subtle signs of the atmosphere. They learned to align human ambition with the grand, unyielding cycles of nature. To truly grasp the genius of their sailing decisions, we must first grasp the science that made their world possible. The same physical principles that filled their sails are waiting for us to unlock in a simple tank of water. That dependable rhythm of the monsoon begins with a simple, powerful dance between the earth and the ocean. Picture a massive, invisible sea breeze on a continental scale. When the sun heats the vast landmass of Asia during the summer, the air above it warms, rises, and creates an area of low pressure. Over the cooler Indian Ocean, the air remains denser, creating higher pressure. Air, much like water, always flows from high pressure to low, and so a mighty wind rushes in from the sea to fill the void over the land. This is the summer monsoon, a life-giving wind that carries moisture and maritime traders alike toward the continent. Come winter, the situation reverses. The land cools faster than the ocean, creating high pressure over the continent and low pressure over the sea. The wind now flows back out from land to sea, establishing the winter monsoon that would carry those same traders home. It is a colossal, breathing rhythm of the planet, a single, slow inhalation and exhalation each year. Ancient sailors did not need to know the physics of pressure gradients to feel this rhythm in their bones. They observed the changing direction of smoke from distant villages, the behavior of birds, and the slow shift in swell patterns. They learned to anticipate the turn of the wind with an accuracy that would astonish us today. But to truly reverse engineer their decisions, we must add one more crucial ingredient to our model, a force that gives the monsoon its characteristic curve. The rotation of the Earth deflects moving air, a phenomenon known as the Coriolis effect. In the northern hemisphere, this deflection twists the wind to the right, shaping the straightforward flow from sea to land into the great, sweeping arcs that filled the sails of history. This is the scientific foundation that turns myth into method. By understanding these core principles of heat, pressure, and planetary spin, we can build a bridge across time. We can recreate these forces on a smaller scale, not with complex supercomputers, but with simple tools. Our experiments will allow us to see the world through the eyes of a Phoenician captain, feeling the shift in the wind not as data on a screen, but as a tangible force guiding our vessel. This knowledge is our key to unlocking their most guarded navigational secrets. So, where do we begin this journey of discovery? The first step is to create our own miniature ocean and atmosphere, a stage upon which we can replay the ancient drama of wind and water. Your miniature ocean begins with a single, watertight container. A child's wading pool, a livestock watering trough, or a long, shallow storage bin will serve as the foundation of your maritime laboratory. The key is its length, as a longer tank allows waves to develop more naturally, mimicking the open ocean's swell. Fill it with water to a depth of at least a foot, enough for a model hull to float realistically, and for the water itself to develop a personality of its own. This is not just a tub of water, it is your controlled slice of the ancient Indian Ocean, waiting for you to command its winds and currents. To breathe life into this still water, you will need a wave generator. This can be as simple as a flat piece of wood or plastic attached to a small, variable speed motor, creating an oscillating paddle that rhythmically disturbs the water's surface. Alternatively, a powerful household fan directed at an angle across the tank can generate both waves and a direct wind, creating a more complex combined sea state. This is how you will simulate the very conditions that ancient captains had to read and respect, from a gentle, following monsoon breeze to the choppy, confused seas near a coast. With your arena ready, it becomes a stage for discovery. You can test different hull shapes, carving them from buoyant wood or foam. Does a wide, flat-bottomed boat, modeled after an ancient how handle your generated waves better than a narrow, deep-keeled model? How does shifting a pile of small stones, acting as cargo, from the center of the model to one side affect its stability when a wave strikes? These are the tangible, visual experiments that translate abstract historical descriptions into physical truth. This simple setup allows you to see, firsthand, the practical challenges that governed every decision made on a monsoon sea. The first secret we can uncover in this tank is the most fundamental one, the relationship between a ship's shape and its inherent stability. A long, narrow hull, like those used by ancient Mediterranean traders, cuts smoothly through the water but offers a surprising vulnerability. As you place your first model boat into the tank, the true nature of buoyancy becomes a physical reality, not just a concept. Begin by carving or shaping several simple hulls from wood, dense foam, or even waterproofed paper. Create one with a wide, rounded belly like an Indian Ocean how, another that is slender and sharp like a Roman galley, and perhaps a third with a flat bottom reminiscent of a river barge. The variation in their forms is the heart of the experiment. Now the loading begins. Use small, uniform weights like pebbles, coins, or even washers to simulate cargo. Add them slowly, one by one, into the center of each model. Watch closely. The wide-hulled how might sit lower in the water but remain remarkably stable, its buoyancy distributed across a broad area. The narrow galley, however, will likely tilt more readily, its stability compromised by a high center of gravity long before it risks sinking. This is the critical moment of discovery, the point where you find the maximum load before the hull becomes unstable or water washes over the gunwale. Record this tipping point for each design. You are not just adding weight, you are recreating the age-old dilemma of every ship's captain. weighing the profit of more cargo against the peril of a monsoon swell. A vessel overloaded with spices becomes a tomb in a sudden squall. This simple test reveals the profound, pragmatic wisdom embedded in historical shipwrecks and records. Why were certain hull shapes favored for the open ocean while others were confined to coastal routes? Your tank provides the visceral answer. It was a calculated compromise between capacity and survival. Now that we feel the balance of the hull beneath us, the next question is how to move it. The silent partner in this dance awaits its turn, the sail that captures the wind's invisible force. A sail is not merely a piece of cloth, it is a carefully engineered wing designed to steal power from the air itself. To explore this ancient art, you will need to become a sailmaker. Cut simple shapes from sturdy fabric or even stiff paper, a large rectangle for a classic square sail, a long, sharp triangle for a lateen rig, and a more irregular four-sided shape for a lug sail. Attach each one in turn to a fixed mast on your model boat, ensuring they can swing freely to catch the breeze. Now position your household fan. This is your artificial monsoon. Start with the wind directly behind the boat, the classic downwind run that powered so many voyages. Watch how the square sail billows, capturing the air like a bucket catching water and pushing the model forward with a straightforward, brute force. This is the power that drove Viking longships and Roman merchant vessels across vast distances. Then shift the fan, angle the wind so it comes from the side, a beam reach. This is where the story changes dramatically. The triangular lateen sail, borrowed from the Arab world, comes alive. It no longer acts as a simple pusher. It begins to function like an airplane wing. The wind flowing over its curved surface creates a difference in pressure, pulling the boat forward and sideways with a surprising efficiency. You can measure this by timing how long it takes for each sail type to cross your tank from a standing start. The lateen rig often proves superior in these crosswind conditions, allowing a vessel to sail closer to the direction from which the wind is blowing. This was its revolutionary advantage. A captain using a square sail might have to wait for a following wind, but a captain with a lateen could tack back and forth, making meaningful progress even when the monsoon was not blowing directly at his back. This simple experiment illuminates centuries of naval history. It reveals why the lateen sail spread so rapidly across the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean, enabling explorers to venture into wind patterns that would have stalled other ships. The sail shape was not an aesthetic choice, it was a survival tool, a direct response to the capricious nature of the winds these sailors sought to master. To push our understanding further, we must move from the water's surface to the air itself, analyzing these shapes in a controlled stream of moving air. A cardboard box, a small fan, and a length of clear plastic tube can become your personal wind laboratory. This simple wind tunnel cuts through the chaos of water and waves, letting you focus purely on the conversation between the wind and your sail. To build one, take a long cardboard box and seal all the openings except for one end, where you mount your fan, and a small viewing window on top. The fan pushes a steady, controllable stream of air through this enclosed space, a predictable monsoon in a box. Inside this channel, you can suspend your model sails one by one, hanging them by strings from the top so they are free to align with the artificial breeze. This is where the invisible becomes visible. Tape thin streamers of ribbon or thread to the front and back of each sail fabric. As the fan whirs to life, watch these streamers intently. Do they flow smoothly over the sail's surface, or do they flutter and dance in chaos? That chaotic fluttering is turbulence, a sign that the sail is stalling and losing its grip on the wind's power. For an even clearer picture, a small stick of incense held carefully upstream will send a thin stream of smoke tracing the air's path. revealing the precise points where the flow separates and efficiency plummets. You are now watching the same aerodynamic forces that ancient sailmakers learned to harness through pure observation and trial. The graceful curve of a lateen sail will often show a smooth, fast flow of air over its outer surface, while a flat square sail might reveal a turbulent, breaking wake directly behind it. But observation is only half the story. To truly understand the thrust each sail generates, attach a simple spring scale to the lines holding your model. As the sail catches the wind, the scale will measure the pull, giving you a number, a quantifiable force. You can now compare the raw pushing power of a square sail on a downwind run to the subtle, lifting pull of a triangular lateen sail when the wind comes from the side. This direct measurement explains so much. It reveals why certain designs persisted for centuries on monsoon routes, where captains needed every ounce of thrust from a reliable wind to cross vast distances on a strict seasonal schedule. The sail was not just a cloth catching air, it was a precision instrument, and your wind tunnel proves it. Yet these visual and force measurements are just the beginning. To move from momentary observation to lasting understanding, we must capture the data itself, creating a permanent record of performance that can be analyzed and compared long after the fan has been turned off. The invisible force of the wind now demands a number. To move from observation to proof, we must give that monsoon breeze a measurable voice. A simple anemometer, crafted from 4 small cups fixed to crossbars on a freely spinning spindle, becomes your key instrument. As the wind pushes the cups, the spindle turns, and each rotation corresponds to a specific wind speed. You can connect this spinning device to a basic data logger, perhaps a smartphone app that uses the phone's microphone to count clicks, or a simple Arduino board that registers each revolution electronically. Position this setup near the exhaust of your wind tunnel or just above your water tank. As your fan hums and your model boat sails, the logger quietly records a time-stamped history of the air's behavior, capturing every gust and lull that would have challenged an ancient captain. This stream of numbers transforms your experiment. You are no longer just watching a boat sail, you are building a case file. Correlate the wind speed data with the performance of your vessel. Did the boat's speed across the tank suddenly drop at the exact moment your logger recorded a 3-second dip in wind velocity? Did the lateen-rigged model maintain a straighter course during a period of steady airflow, while the square sail began to wander when the wind became erratic? This objective data reveals the optimal sailing parameters, the specific wind conditions under which each hull and sail combination truly excelled. It introduces a layer of factual clarity into our historical reconstruction. We are no longer speculating about why a Phoenician captain might have reefed his sail. We can see the precise wind speed at which our model becomes unmanageable. The ancient mariner senses the feel of the wind on his neck, the sound in the rigging were his data logger. We are simply augmenting his profound wisdom with digital precision, allowing the numbers to tell a story their language could not fully capture. This evidence-based analysis grounds their legendary seamanship in the unassailable logic of physics, but the wind is only one partner in this dance. The ocean itself has a topography of moving hills and valleys that a captain must learn to read. The ocean's rolling hills are a force no sail can ignore. To simulate the monsoon's most treacherous phase, the transition between seasons, we must give our water tank a voice of its own. An oscillating board, rhythmically pushed and pulled by a simple motor, becomes your wave machine, churning the water into a spectrum of seas. Start with gentle, widely spaced swells, the kind a seasoned captain might use to make good time. Then, gradually increase the frequency, creating a steep, choppy confusion of waves that mimics the angry aftermath of a squall. This is where your model boats face their truest test. Launch a wide-hulled D-How replica into this manufactured chaos. Watch as it climbs one liquid mountain, only to slam into the trough beyond, its bow sometimes burying itself in oncoming water, a phenomenon known as pitching. A narrower, sharper hull might slice through the same waves but with a different, equally dangerous reaction. Its stern caught by a following wave and swung violently sideways in a terrifying broach. You can even observe yaw as the boat's bow swings left and right off its intended course, fighting the waves for control. Each hull shape, each load distribution tells a different story of compromise. A heavily laden merchant ship might ride deep and steady but risk being swamped by a large wave, while a lighter, faster vessel might dance over the swells only to become unmanageable in the cross-chop. This is the ancient dilemma made physical, the eternal choice between the speed that brings profit and the stability that ensures survival. By adjusting the wave's amplitude and rhythm, you are not just playing with water, you are recreating the precise conditions that forced a captain to heave to furl his sails and simply try to ride out the storm, or to press on desperately for a distant shore. These practical trials in your backyard tank illuminate the nuanced, gut-level decisions mariners made when their world turned to liquid chaos. Their only constant in such turmoil was the fixed map above them, the silent, unwavering guide of the stars. The same stars that guided ancient mariners across the Indian Ocean can now steer your model boat in a backyard tank. On a clear, dark night, move your water-filled laboratory outside. A single, dim light source, perhaps a small LED covered with paper, becomes your Polaris, the North Star. Position your model vessel in the center of the tank and align its bow directly with this fixed point of light. You are now holding a celestial bearing, just as a Phoenician navigator would have done on a vast, featureless sea. The true challenge begins as you introduce motion. Start your wave generator on its gentlest setting, creating a soft, rhythmic swell. Your boat will begin to pitch and yaw, its alignment with your artificial star constantly breaking. Your task is to use a small rudder or a paddle to continuously correct its course, fighting the water's push to keep the bow pointed at that unwavering light. This simple act of correction reveals the immense concentration required for dead reckoning, where a navigator estimates his position based on a known starting point, his estimated speed, and the passage of time. Every slight drift, every correction you make, is a lesson in the profound mental effort behind ancient voyages. The star provides a constant reference, but the sea constantly tries to steal it away. This celestial fix was the Monsoon sailor's bedrock of certainty, a heavenly anchor in a world of variable winds and currents. Their ability to maintain this mental map for weeks on end, adjusting for the perceived movement of the stars through the night, was a form of high art. Your small, darkened tank makes that art tangible, transforming abstract astronomical knowledge into a physical test of skill and patience. This celestial dance between a stable sky and a restless ocean leads directly to the ship's hidden backbone, the structure that gave it the will to hold its line against the sea's persistent push. Beneath the waterline lies the ship's hidden anchor, a feature that fights the monsoon's constant push to the side. The keel is the unsung hero of directional stability, a fin or a long, weighted spine that bites into the water to prevent the wind from shoving the vessel sideways. To test its vital role, fabricate a new series of model hulls, but this time focus on what hangs below. Carve one with a deep, sharp fin keel that plunges straight down. Build another with a wide, shallow draft, almost flat like a barge. For a third, attach movable leeboards on the sides, wooden panels that can be raised or lowered like wings into the water. These three configurations represent the core choices ancient shipwrights faced, each with profound consequences for a long voyage. Place your models into the water tank one by one, activating your fan to send a consistent beam reach wind across the surface. The difference is immediate and dramatic. The deep-keeled boat, once it gains momentum, stubbornly resists being pushed downwind. It holds its line, tracking straight as an arrow, its hidden fin gripping the water. The flat-bottomed model, however, slides away almost effortlessly, crabbing sideways across the tank with every gust. It offers little resistance to the lateral force, a terrifying prospect in a crosswind with a lee shore looming. The leeboards present a fascinating compromise, their effectiveness entirely dependent on being lowered into the flow. This simple visual test reveals the fundamental trade-off every ship designer had to weigh. A deep keel provides superb tracking for long, open ocean runs on a steady monsoon, but it makes the vessel clumsy in crowded harbors and vulnerable to running aground on shallow coasts. A shallow draft sacrifices that directional stability for the flexibility to explore river mouths and coral atolls, but it turns every crosswind into a navigational battle. Your experiment measures this directly, timing how long each design takes to cross the tank versus how far it is pushed off course. The data tells a clear story of compromise, a story written in the hulls of sunken wrecks. This underwater architecture was a silent, decisive partner in the success of ancient trade, a direct response to the specific challenges of a monsoon highway. That constant battle against the elements extended to the most precious resource on board, the fresh water that sustained the crew for weeks at sea. A captain's most critical calculation was not just about wind and waves, but about the shrinking supply of drinking water stored in clay amphorae deep within the hold. One of the heaviest cargoes a ship could carry was not silk or spice, but the water needed to keep its crew alive. Recreate this ancient logistical puzzle by filling several small, identical containers with water. These are your clay amphorae, the lifeblood of the voyage. Place them all in the center of your model boat's hull, creating a centralized high-mass load. Launch the vessel into your tank with a gentle wave pattern and observe its behavior. It may ride deep but stable, a solid platform in calm seas. Now activate your fan to simulate a strong beam wind or increase the wave action. That concentrated weight becomes a pendulum, amplifying every roll and making the boat recover from each wave with a sluggish, unsettling hesitation. This is the risk of putting all your eggs or all your water in one basket. Now, redistribute the same containers, spread them out along the length of the hull, and nestle them low along the centerline if your model design allows. This change is transformative. The distributed load lowers the boat's center of gravity dramatically, giving it a stiffer, more resistant posture against the heeling force of the wind. It recovers from waves with a quicker, more confident snap. You are physically demonstrating the principle of rotational inertia, where spreading mass out makes an object harder to tip over. This simple rearrangement of weight mirrors the life or death calculations of a ship's master. Storing all water amidships might make for easier access, but it created a vessel that was dangerously tender in a monsoon squall. Distributing the weight demanded more effort but gifted the ship with the stability to survive. Your experiment reveals that the optimal layout was not about maximum capacity, but about intelligent placement, a precise trade-off where seaworthiness always trumped simple volume. This hard-won stability in the hull then gave sailors the confidence to fine-tune their most dynamic tool, the set of the sails. The precise angle of a sail against the wind holds the difference between a swift passage and a drifting hull. Attach your model sails to a movable boom, a small hinge or pivot that allows you to adjust the sail's angle with precision. In your wind tunnel or over your water tank, set your fan to a constant breeze, then begin the meticulous process of trimming. Pull the sail in tight, close to the center line of your boat, and observe the result. The model will likely heel over sharply, fighting to stay upright as the sail captures the wind's full force at a steep angle. Now ease the sail out, letting it swing wider. The boat straightens, but its forward progress may slow to a crawl, the sail now spilling the very wind it was meant to capture. Somewhere between these two extremes lies the sweet spot, the perfect angle of attack where the sail generates maximum forward thrust with only a manageable, stable heel. You can measure this by timing the boat's speed across the tank and noting the angle of its lean for each trim setting. This continuous, subtle adjustment was the heartbeat of ancient seamanship. A master navigator did not simply set a course and forget the rigging. His hands were constantly on the sheets, feeling the pressure change in the ropes, watching the set of the canvas, and making tiny corrections to maintain that peak efficiency. In the steady, powerful flow of a monsoon wind, this mastery translated directly into distance covered, into reaching a distant port before the seasonal winds reversed. It was a dynamic dance with an invisible partner, a skill learned not from a manual but from thousands of hours on the water, where a novice's mistake could mean being left behind by the fleet. This nuanced control over the ship's very soul was essential for exploiting the monsoon's immense power, but that power also tested the vessel's physical body to its limits. The choice of wood and the method of construction determined whether a ship would endure a single season or become a legend of the trade routes. The very soul of a ship is shaped by the forest it was born from. To understand the material choices that defined ancient seafaring, we must build a small fleet of identical hulls, each from a different substance. Carve one from a dense, water-resistant wood like cedar or teak. Weave another from bundles of reeds or papyrus tightly bound together. Create a third from a hollowed-out gourd or a sealed clay pot, mimicking early buoyant containers. If you are feeling adventurous, stretch a piece of rawhide or thick, oiled fabric over a simple frame to simulate a skin-on-frame boat. These models represent the core material philosophies of the ancient world, from the mighty Phoenician cedar ships to the reed boats of the marsh Arabs and the skin-covered curraghs of the Celts. Launch your fleet into the water tank and begin the test of time. Start your wave generator on a gentle, rhythmic setting, the equivalent of a week of steady sailing. The wooden hull, if properly sealed, will bob with confidence, shedding water and maintaining its rigid form. The reed boat, however, tells a different story. It may float even higher initially, its porous structure full of trapped air, but watch it over time. It will begin to absorb water, growing heavier, its bundles softening and becoming more flexible under the constant stress. This flexibility is a double-edged sword. It can absorb the shock of a wave that might shatter a rigid hull, but it also saps the vessel's structural integrity over a long voyage. The sealed pottery boat is rigid and buoyant but terrifyingly brittle. A single sharp impact from a simulated rock or an overly enthusiastic wave against the tank wall spelling its immediate demise. This hands-on comparison makes abstract historical choices vividly clear. A culture living among mighty forests would naturally build in wood, creating durable vessels capable of multiple monsoon cycles. A civilization from a river delta, rich in reeds but lacking tall trees, would master the art of the bundled boat, accepting its shorter lifespan as the price of maritime access. Your experiment measures this trade-off in real time, as you observe which hulls remain seaworthy after repeated soaking and pounding, and which ones become waterlogged, misshapen, or broken. This was the fundamental calculus of naval architecture, where local resources met the unforgiving demands of the ocean. A captain's trust in his vessel was built upon this intimate knowledge of its material soul, a knowledge that began with the sound of an axe in a forest and ended with the feel of a reliable hull beneath his feet. That same need for intimate knowledge extended beneath the waves, where hidden shoals and changing depths demanded a simple, brilliant tool for navigation. The ocean floor rises to meet a ship long before land appears on the horizon. To navigate the treacherous monsoon coasts, ancient sailors needed a way to see through the water, and their tool of choice was a simple weight on a line. You can forge your own sounding lead from a fishing sinker or a smooth, heavy stone, tying it securely to a length of cord marked at regular intervals. These marks are your fathoms, your direct measurement of the world beneath the waves. Now, transform your water tank into a coastal approach, submerge a brick to create a hidden shoal, or build a sloping ramp of sand to simulate a gradually shelving beach. Lower your lead line from your model boat as you slowly push it across the tank, calling out the depths as the marks on your line meet the water's surface. A sudden change from 5 marks to 2 signals the edge of an underwater cliff, a place to steer clear of. A steady, gradual decrease in the count tells you are approaching a shoreline, even if you cannot see it yet. This was the tactile art of bathymetry. The lead did more than just measure depth. A cavity in its base could be filled with tallow, bringing up a sample of the seafloor, whether it was sand, mud, or broken shell. This sample was a navigational fingerprint, confirming a ship's position when celestial fixes were obscured by cloud. A captain hearing mud on the lead in a region known for its sandy bottom knew he had been set off course by an unexpected current. This continuous, rhythmic act of heaving the lead and interpreting its message provided a constant, reassuring check against the deadliest of errors, running aground on an unseen shore. It was a conversation with the deep, a way of feeling your way forward when the sky and sea offered no clear answers. Knowing exactly where you were in the water was only half the battle. The other was knowing how far you had come. A captain's plotted course was a prayer against the unknown, a line drawn on a mental map between celestial fixes. You can recreate this fundamental act of navigation by marking a precise, measured course in your water tank, perhaps from one end to the other. With a timer in hand, launch your model boat and set your fan to a steady breeze. Time its journey over that known distance, then calculate its speed with simple division, distance divided by time. This number is your vessel's rate of progress, the core variable in dead reckoning. Now, introduce the ocean's silent treachery, a current. Use a long paddle to gently stir the water, creating a slow, crosswise drift. Send your boat on the same course with the same wind and time it again. You will likely find it arrives either faster or slower, and more importantly, far down current from its intended target. Your calculated position, based solely on your original speed and direction, is now wrong. This is the insidious nature of dead reckoning error, a small miscalculation at the start of a voyage that grows into a massive positional doubt after weeks at sea. A navigator might have known his ship could make 5 knots in a good breeze, but without accounting for an unseen current pushing him 20 miles off course each day, his landfall could become a catastrophe. Your simple tank makes this error visible and immediate. You must now practice the correction, aiming your boat's bow slightly into the current, upstream of your target, to counteract the drift and achieve a true course. This constant adjustment, this fight against invisible forces, required a mental discipline we can scarcely grasp today. It was a continuous loop of estimation, observation, and correction, where the penalty for a lapse in attention was not a wrong answer on a test, but a ship lost on a lee shore. This profound isolation on the open ocean made the sight of another sail a moment of immense relief and vital opportunity. sparking a unique language of the sea. A fleet's survival depended on a language of cloth and flame. For your 13th experiment, gather colored cloth for simple flags or use small, battery-powered LED lights in different hues. Assign a basic vocabulary to each signal: a red flag for change course to starboard, a green light for reef sails, a slow flashing white light for a weather warning from the east. Position 2 of your model boats at opposite ends of your water tank, a distance representing perhaps a mile of open ocean. One boat is the flagship, the other a trailing vessel struggling to keep visual contact. Begin transmitting. The message seems clear at close range, a crisp red square against the sky. Now increase the distance between the models. The same red flag becomes a blurry speck, its color washed out by the glare of your workshop lights reflecting off the water's surface. Add your wave generator, churning the water into a choppy sea. Now that distant flag disappears entirely into the trough of a wave, only to flicker back into view for a moment on the crest, a maddeningly incomplete message. The receiving captain has only fragments to interpret, a brief flash of color that might be red, or perhaps it was orange. His decision, based on that flawed signal, could steer his ship directly into a squall line or away from the safety of the fleet. This exercise makes you intimately aware of the limitations. In the fading light of a monsoon evening or through a curtain of rain, these simple signals were all that stood between order and chaos. A successful voyage required not just sending a message, but ensuring it was received and understood under the very conditions that made communication nearly impossible. This constant, fragile thread of contact highlights why ancient mariners needed to anticipate problems before they required a signal, turning their senses toward the sky itself in a relentless search for clues. The sky itself whispered its intentions to those who knew how to look. For your 14th experiment, you will learn this lost language of the clouds. Fill a spray bottle with water and generate a steady breeze across your tank with your fan. Now, begin to mist the air just above the water's surface, watching closely as the tiny droplets behave in the moving air. A thin, high, wispy haze, what we would call cirrus clouds, drifting slowly from a westerly direction, might signal nothing more than a gentle, consistent breeze, perfect for spreading your sails. But now, change the fan's angle and increase its speed, simulating a shift in the upper atmosphere. Watch how your mist begins to thicken and lower, coalescing into a dark, ragged base that scuds quickly overhead. This is your simulated nimbostratus, the harbinger of a coming squall. The key is correlation. As you observe these changing cloud formations in your miniature sky, simultaneously note the behavior of your anemometer. Did the wind suddenly gust moments after those dark, low clouds formed? Did it fall to a dead calm just as the mist dissipated? You are practicing the empirical forecasting that was a monsoon captain's most vital tool. He knew that a mackerel sky, those high, rippled cirrocumulus clouds, often foretold a change in the weather within 24 hours. A sudden, greenish tint to the underside of a thunderhead was a universally understood signal to reef sails immediately, as it often indicated dangerously large hail and destructive winds. This was not superstition, it was a refined science of observation, passed down from master to apprentice over countless voyages. Your spray bottle and fan let you rehearse these life or death decisions in perfect safety. Seeing those dark clouds form, will you order the sails shortened now, losing a little speed but gaining security? Or will you gamble on the squall missing you, risking a torn sail or a broken mast? This direct link between atmospheric clue and practical action separated the prosperous merchant from the legendary navigator. Their entire voyage could hinge on correctly interpreting the subtle drama playing out in the heavens, a skill that kept their fragile wooden world afloat in an ocean of uncertainty. That same need for security extended to the moments when the ship was most vulnerable, when it had to find a grip on the unseen world beneath the waves. A ship's ultimate security often rested on a single point of contact with the unseen world below. Your 15th experiment brings that critical connection to life by testing the very tools that kept a vessel from being driven onto a lee shore. Begin by crafting a small fleet of miniature anchors, each representing a different ancient solution. Carve one from a flat stone with a hole drilled through its center, a simple ring anchor used for millennia. Whittle another from wood into a classic T-shape with two flukes, mimicking early metal designs. For a third, tightly weave a small basket and fill it with stones, creating an anchor that relies on bulk and friction. These three types embody the core philosophies of early maritime engineering: the dead weight, the biting hook, and the grappling mass. Now prepare your tank's seabed. In one section, create a soft, deep layer of fine sand. In another, spread a coarse bed of small gravel. Finally, mix a thick, silty mud from clay and water. The stage is set for a contest of grip. Lower each anchor carefully onto a different seabed, ensuring it settles naturally. Then, attach a string to the anchor's ring and run it over a smooth rod at the tank's edge, tying the end to a small bucket. This bucket is your force gauge. Begin adding measured weights one by one into the bucket, slowly increasing the pull on the anchor line. Watch with intense focus. The stone ring anchor might hold tenaciously in the soft mud, its broad surface creating a powerful suction, but then it skates uselessly across the hard gravel, unable to find purchase. The wooden fluke anchor, however, may drag initially but then suddenly dig its tip into the gravel bed, locking in place and requiring a dramatically heavier weight to dislodge. The stone-filled basket could perform consistently across all bottoms, its weight and friction providing a mediocre but reliable hold where specialized anchors failed. You are measuring more than just failure points. You are charting the specific conditions that made each design a masterpiece of its environment. A captain carrying a stone ring anchor knew he could find safety in a muddy river estuary, but he also knew the terror of a dragging anchor in a rocky cove during a rising gale. This simple test reveals why ancient shipwrecks often show a variety of anchors aboard a single vessel, a toolkit for the unknown seabeds they would encounter. Reliable ground tackle was not a convenience. It was the difference between a restful night and a catastrophic shipwreck, the cornerstone of safety that gave a crew the confidence to pause for repairs even in an unfamiliar anchorage. With the security of a well-set anchor, we can finally explore how those sailors performed the most delicate of tasks, mending their floating world far from any shore. A splintering crack against a submerged log could doom a voyage 1,000 miles from the nearest shipyard. For your 16th experiment, take one of your wooden model hulls and deliberately create a small breach, perhaps a thin split along a seam or a hole the size of a coin. This is your emergency, a sudden intake of water that demands an immediate, ingenious response. Your toolkit is the ancient world itself. Heat a small amount of beeswax or pine resin until it becomes pliable, mimicking the tar and pitch carried in pots aboard every serious trading vessel. Press this sticky sealant directly into the crack, smoothing it over to create a watertight barrier. For a larger hole, cut a small square of coarse linen or leather, coat one side in your homemade tar, and press it firmly over the breach, creating a primitive but effective patch. Another method involves taking tough plant fibers, like hemp or jute, and carefully weaving them back and forth across the damaged planking, pulling the split wood tightly together before sealing the entire weave with tar. Now lower the repaired hull back into your water tank. The true test begins with the first gentle wave from your generator. Does the wax seal hold, or does it soften and peel away under the water's persistent chill? Does the cloth patch maintain its adhesion, or does a corner slowly lift, allowing a telltale stream of bubbles to escape? Increase the wave action to simulate days of continued sailing. A well-executed fiber weave sealed with tar will often prove remarkably resilient, its flexibility allowing it to move with the hulls working in the waves without losing its grip. You are witnessing the stark difference between a temporary barge and a voyage-saving repair. This hands-on struggle with materials makes the historical accounts visceral. A crew's ability to effect such a repair meant they could avoid making for a hostile, uncharted coast simply to fix a leak, a decision that could save weeks of travel time or even their entire cargo. It transformed a potential catastrophe into a manageable inconvenience, a testament to the practical genius carried in every sailor's hands. This hard-won integrity of the hull brought a captain's focus back to his primary purpose, the profitable and precarious business of loading his ship. A perfectly balanced hull becomes a different ship when the cargo shifts. For your 17th experiment, transform your model boat into a floating warehouse by loading it with two distinct types of weights. Use small, dense objects like metal nuts or stones to represent heavy trade goods, such as ingots of copper or bags of precious gems. Then use larger, lighter bundles of sponge or cork to simulate bulky, low-density cargo like raw cotton, woven textiles, or aromatic spices. The challenge begins not at sea, but in the stowage. Place all the heavy metal weights high up in the hull, perhaps on a small platform representing a deck, and stuff the lightweight sponges deep in the bottom. Launch your vessel into the tank under a steady breeze. The result is immediate and alarming. The boat heels over dramatically, its high center of gravity making it feel tippy and unstable with every small wave. Now reverse the arrangement. Nestle the dense metal weights low along the keel line and stack the lighter sponges above them. The transformation is profound. The same boat now rides with a confident, upright posture, slicing through the water with newfound authority. This is the foundational principle of stowage, a lesson learned through centuries of lost cargoes, but the true test of a crew's skill came mid-voyage. Simulate a week of hard sailing by running your wave generator for an extended period. Watch as the relentless motion gradually shifts the sponges, the bulky cargo loosening and sliding to one side, creating a persistent, dangerous list. Your model will now struggle to sail a straight line, constantly pulling to one side. This is where the ancient crew would spring into action. Carefully, using a small tool, you must redistribute that loose cargo, moving the sponges back to center or even compensating by shifting a few of the low, dense weights to the opposite side. This dynamic balancing act was a continuous duty, not a one-time task. A sudden squall or a change in course could demand a complete reassessment of the load. On the bustling monsoon trade routes where time was currency, a poorly stowed ship was a slow ship, and a slow ship could miss its seasonal window home, stranding it in a foreign port for months. Mastering this daily dance of weight and stability was what separated a profitable venture from a financial disaster. With their floating warehouse expertly managed, sailors could turn their attention to the living world around them, seeking guidance from the sky and the sea itself. A seabird circling overhead was more than a welcome sight. It was a living map. Ancient navigators learned to read the daily routines of ocean wildlife as clear signposts to unseen shores, and you can revive this ecological wisdom in your own tank. For this 18th experiment, you will need a few simple decoys. Small, floating objects like wine corks can represent resting seabirds, while weighted shapes, perhaps cut from thin plastic and suspended just below the surface, can mimic the shadows of large marine animals or dense schools of fish. Launch your model boat into the center of your miniature ocean, and then place these decoys in specific, strategic locations. A cluster of floating corks off to your starboard side simulates a flock of terns or gannets gathered over a productive feeding ground, which often indicates underwater structures like reefs or seamounts that could mean land is near. A solitary, deeply submerged shape moving in a steady direction might represent a migrating whale, its path sometimes paralleling a coastline for hundreds of miles. The challenge is to interpret these signs and adjust your vessel's course accordingly. If you see your floating bird decoys concentrated to the east, you might turn the model's bow in that direction, reasoning that a breeding colony and its associated island must lie just beyond the horizon. This practice transforms the ocean from a blank slate into a populated landscape teeming with information. In an age without radar or GPS, this knowledge provided a critical layer of navigational redundancy. On a day when clouds obscured the sun and stars, the sight of a specific type of albatross, known to never venture far from certain latitudes, could confirm a ship's position. The direction of flying fish at dawn, often fleeing toward the open sea from coastal predators, could hint at the bearing of a hidden shoreline. Your simple decoys make this abstract skill tangible, forcing you to base a critical sailing decision not on an instrument, but on your observation of the natural world. This deep, symbiotic awareness of other species was a hallmark of the master Monsoon sailor, a man who understood that his survival was intertwined with the creatures of the air and sea. This ecological intuition guided the ship's general direction, but precise control over its every movement relied on a different kind of genius, one carved from wood and mounted at the stern. A ship's true will is expressed through its rudder, the final arbiter between a chosen course and the ocean's constant persuasion. To explore this critical evolution, you must become a naval architect of the miniature, crafting a series of steering implements for your model boat. Begin with a simple steering oar, a long, flat paddle lashed to the side of the stern, replicating the primary steering method for millennia. Then, construct a fixed sternpost rudder, a vertical plank of wood hinged directly onto the boat's centerline. Finally, fashion a steering paddle, a shorter, broader version of the oar meant for quick, forceful adjustments. Each of these designs represents a distinct chapter in the story of maritime control. The real test begins in your water tank. With your fan generating a steady beam wind, command your model to turn into the wind, attacking maneuver. The side-mounted steering oar struggles, its leverage compromised as the boat heels, the blade alternately lifting out of the water or digging in too deep, resulting in a wide, sluggish turn. The central sternpost rudder, however, bites consistently into the flow, pivoting the boat through a much tighter, more predictable arc. Now simulate a downwind jibe, a dangerous maneuver where the stern passes through the wind and the sail can swing across the deck with violent force. The steering paddle allows for frantic, last-second corrections to keep the boat straight, while the fixed rudder provides a steadying influence that prevents the broach in the first place. You are measuring more than turning radius, you are measuring the very idea of command. A vessel equipped with an efficient sternpost rudder could confidently sail closer to the wind, knowing it could tack quickly to avoid a lee shore or navigate a narrow channel. This transformation from reactive paddling to proactive steering gave captains the confidence to exploit the Monsoon's full power, no longer just its following winds but its oblique angles as well. It turned a journey from a suggested path into a chosen one. This hard-won control over the ship's direction conserved not just distance, but the most precious resource on any long voyage, the energy of the crew who manned it. A ship's greatest asset was not its size, but the endurance of its weary crew. For this next experiment, you will impose a strict rule upon yourself, acting as a skeleton crew on a long, monotonous passage. Set your model boat on a steady beam, reach across your water tank, the fan humming at a constant speed to simulate the reliable push of a monsoon wind. Your goal is to cover the greatest distance with the fewest possible adjustments. For the first 5 minutes, you are allowed to make any necessary trim to the sails or rudder to find that perfect, efficient groove. Then the real test begins. Set a timer and force yourself to step back. For the next 10 minutes, you are only permitted to intervene if the boat is in immediate danger of capsizing or stopping completely. No tiny tweaks, no minor corrections. Watch what happens. A well-designed hull with a deep keel will likely hold its line with a stubborn determination, its natural stability fighting the waves' attempts to push it off course. A less stable model, however, will begin to wander almost immediately, its bow falling away from the wind until the sails luff and it loses all momentum, or it might slowly but surely curve into a wide, unintended circle. This simple act of restraint reveals the profound value of passive stability, a quality ancient shipwrights baked into their designs. A vessel that could practically steer itself for long stretches allowed exhausted sailors to rest, to tend to repairs, or to simply conserve their strength for the critical moments when a storm demanded every ounce of their effort. This was the silent partnership between wood and water, an engineering philosophy where the ship itself became a member of the crew. The less energy spent on constant correction, the more remained for survival. And when survival itself was on the line, that energy was channeled into creating a beacon, a signal of fire and smoke that could cut across the vast emptiness of the sea. A thin column of smoke rising from a ship's deck was a silent conversation with the wind itself. For this 21st experiment, you will need a single incense stick and a safe, clear area near your water tank. Light the tip and watch as the smoke begins its lazy ascent. This delicate plume is your direct window into the behavior of the air, a tool that required no technology, only a keen eye. Position your fan to create a steady breeze across your miniature ocean, then hold the incense upwind of your model vessel. Observe how the smoke stream behaves. Does it rise in a straight, vertical column before being caught and torn away by the wind, indicating a stable, consistent airflow perfect for sailing? Or does it curl and dance erratically close to the water's surface, betraying the turbulent, shifting gusts of a dying or changing monsoon? This real-time data was invaluable for tactical decisions. A captain watching his signal fires smoke blow steadily toward the northeast knew he could set a confident course to the southwest, riding a fair wind. If the smoke suddenly began to spiral or sink, it was a visceral warning of an impending wind shift, a signal to reef sails or change tack before the squall line even appeared on the horizon. Beyond signaling, smoke calibrated the human senses. On a vast, featureless sea, it was often difficult to feel the true direction of a light breeze, but the smoke plume provided an unambiguous arrow, cutting through the disorientation of the open ocean. This simple column of ash and air provided a continuous, living weather vane, a primal link between the mariner's intention and the atmosphere's whim. Having mastered the language of the air, these sailors turned their attention to the hidden rivers flowing within the sea itself, harnessing ocean currents to steal a few extra miles each day. An unseen river flows within every ocean, a silent conveyor belt that can make or break a voyage. To chart this hidden highway, release a small fleet of drift buoys into your water tank, simple corks or lightweight balls that ride just on the surface. Activate your wave generator and fan together, creating a complex interplay of wind-driven waves and a deeper, slower current you can direct with a submerged paddle. As your buoys are set adrift, begin tracking their positions, marking their location on a simple grid every 30 seconds. You are not just watching floating objects, you are mapping the liquid topography of your miniature sea. Some buoys will scurry quickly downwind, caught in the direct push of the surface layer, while others, perhaps caught in a gyre you created, will spin in a lazy circle. The resulting map reveals the current's true personality, its speed, its direction, and its hidden eddies. Now, launch your model boat with a clear destination in mind. The challenge is to use your new map, not fight it. If a strong current flows diagonally across your intended path, you must point your boat's bow upstream, sacrificing a direct line for a more efficient ground track, just as a captain crossing the Agulhas current would have done. Alternatively, if you find a current flowing directly with your course, you can furl your sails slightly, conserving your canvas while the ocean itself carries you forward at no cost. This is the art of current sailing, a practice that separated the master navigator from the mere sailor. They learned to read the color and temperature of the water, the specific swell patterns, and the behavior of drifting seaweed to detect these flows without any instruments. Your buoys make this invisible force visible, transforming it from a mystery into a tool. A perfectly mapped current could add 50 miles to a day's run, turning a 3-month journey into a 2.5-month triumph, ensuring a ship caught the very tail of the profitable Monsoon. But this same ocean that offered a free ride could also turn violent, demanding a completely different set of skills focused not on speed, but on pure survival. A sudden gust can transform a vital sail into an instrument of destruction. For your 23rd experiment, you must engineer a way to shrink your sail's power on command. Begin by modifying your model sails with simple reefing systems. One sail could have small loops of thread sewn in a horizontal row, through which you can lace a separate line, pulling the sail's foot up toward the yard to reduce its area. Another model might use a furling system where the sail is wrapped around its own boom or a stay by twisting a control line. These are your emergency brakes, the tools that depower a vessel in a crisis. Now place your model in the wind tunnel or on the water tank and set your fan to a steady, manageable breeze. Note the boat's speed and its angle of heel. This is your baseline, the calm before the squall. Then, dramatically increase the fan's speed, simulating the violent onset of a monsoon storm. The unreefed boat will likely heel over dangerously, its rigging straining, its progress becoming a chaotic fight for survival. This is your moment to act. With the wind howling in your miniature world, practice reefing. Pull the reefing line on your first sail, bundling the lower portion up and securing it. The change is immediate. The boat rights itself, trading raw speed for crucial stability. It may slow, but it stops fighting the wind and starts working with it. Time how long it takes you to execute each method under this simulated duress. A furling system might be faster, but could leave a poorly shaped sail that flutters inefficiency, while a tide reef creates a smaller, but still aerodynamically clean surface. You are measuring more than speed reduction. You are measuring the preservation of the ship itself. A captain who could reef his sails in minutes, not hours, kept his mast from splintering and his hull from being overwhelmed by a following sea. This practiced, frantic drill was a routine necessity, the difference between riding out a squall and being dismasted in the open ocean. With the vessel secured against the storm's fury, a sailor's attention would turn toward the horizon, searching for the fixed points of the coast to guide them through the tempest. A distant headland or a lone watchtower gave a captain his final, fixed reference before the open sea. For this next experiment, you will transform the edges of your water tank into a familiar coastline. Place a tall, thin bottle to represent a lighthouse on a cliff, a wide, bushy plant to stand in for a distinctive forested cape, and a small, uniquely shaped stone to mark a treacherous offshore island. These are your visual bearings, the signposts of a well-known shore. Launch your model boat and practice the ancient art of piloting, steering not by a compass but by alignment. You might aim your vessel so that the bottle appears directly over the stone, creating a transit line that guides you safely down the center of a deep water channel. The true test begins when you introduce the monsoon's curtain. Drape a thin cloth between your boat and the landmarks, or simply turn down the lights, simulating a sudden squall or a dense morning fog. Your clear alignments vanish into a blur. Now you must sail from memory, counting the seconds in your head, feeling the boat's motion, and estimating when to turn, relying solely on the mental map you built during clear weather. This exercise reveals why coastal knowledge was so valuable. It was often passed down within families or sold for a high price to foreign captains. A single mistake in this phase, a misidentified headland or a forgotten rock, could end a successful months-long voyage just a few hundred yards from safety. This precise visual navigation required a different kind of focus than open ocean sailing, trading celestial grandeur for the intimate details of a single stretch of coast. When even the coastline was obscured, sailors turned their gaze upward once more, to the one landmark that could never be truly hidden. The sun's daily arc offered a reliable compass long before the stars emerged. Place a simple vertical stick firmly into the deck of your model boat, a miniature Gnomon standing ready to cast its testimony. As you push your vessel across the tank, mark the precise tip of the shadow cast by this stick at regular intervals, perhaps every 5 minutes on your simulated voyage. Each mark is a frozen moment in the sun's journey, a data point in the sky's grand clockwork. The line connecting these marks will point roughly east-west, giving you a cardinal direction even on a featureless sea. The true challenge begins when you intentionally steer your model off course, then force yourself to rely only on the changing angle of that single shadow to find your way back. You must learn to read the sun's height as well as its bearing, knowing that a shorter shadow at midday confirms your latitude is roughly correct, while a longer, rapidly shifting shadow in the morning or evening demands immediate course correction. This solar reckoning was the daylight counterpart to stellar navigation, a continuous thread of orientation that prevented days of drift. A captain who lost a day to overcast skies could recalibrate his entire mental map the moment the sun broke through, using the shadow's length and direction to reset his dead reckoning. It was a versatile, always available tool that turned the ship itself into a sundial, its deck a platform for measuring time and space as one unified field. This constant dialogue with the heavens ensured that even when the monsoon's clouds gathered, the navigator never truly lost his way. But maintaining that hard-won course required more than just skill. It demanded a hull that could slip through the water with minimal resistance, a challenge that began with the very finish applied to the wood. A ship's speed was carved not just from its hull, but from the very finish that sealed it against the sea. For your 26th experiment, you become an ancient shipwright preparing a vessel for the long monsoon passage. Gather a selection of natural sealants, beeswax for a smooth, hydrophobic coating, linseed oil to penetrate and protect the wood grain, and a sticky pine resin to create a hard, durable shell. Carefully apply each substance to an identical model hull, ensuring a smooth, even coat from bow to stern. The true test unfolds in your water tank under a steady, measured breeze from your fan. Launch the wax-coated hull first, timing its passage across a fixed distance. Then, test the oiled hull and finally the resin-sealed one, keeping the wind conditions perfectly consistent. The differences can be startling. The waxed hull might glide with a noticeable slickness, its surface repelling water and minimizing the drag that clings to a rough surface. The resin-coated model, while potentially slightly slower initially, offers a different kind of advantage, its rigid shell deflecting minor impacts and resisting the attachment of algae or barnacles that would otherwise slow a ship over weeks at sea. Now begin the test of time, leaving the treated hull submerged for extended periods. The linseed oil may slowly weep out, requiring reapplication, while the beeswax softens and wears away in the moving water. The resin holds firm, but a sharp impact against a simulated rock can crack its brittle armor. You are measuring a critical economic reality, the trade-off between peak speed and long-term durability. A merchant planning a single, rapid round trip on the Monsoon might favor the fastest hull, while a ship owner whose vessel would see years of service would prioritize a coating that fought off the biological fouling that could, over months, cut a ship's speed in half. This intimate knowledge of materials transformed a simple wooden boat into a refined instrument, each coat a calculated decision to cheat the ocean of its slowing grip. Mastering the hull's interaction with the water gave sailors a profound sensitivity to the sea's rhythm, a skill that allowed them to read the ocean's own topography in the endless roll of the waves. The ocean's endless swell carries a coded message for those who know how to listen. Your 27th experiment is to become fluent in this language of moving water. Set your wave generator to produce a long, rhythmic, low-amplitude swell, the kind that marches in steady lines from a single distant point. This is a ground swell born from a storm hundreds of miles away. Launch your model boat and practice the subtle art of steering to meet these liquid hills. Align your vessel so the swells strike it at a slight angle off the bow, letting it ride up one slope and surf gently down the other in a comfortable, rolling motion that maximizes speed and minimizes strain. Now change the wave pattern entirely. Create a short, steep, choppy sea with waves coming from multiple directions, the chaotic signature of a local wind whipping the surface into a frenzy. This is a wind-wave system, and your boat's reaction is immediate and violent, pitching and rolling with no clear rhythm. The challenge is to steer away from the worst of it, to find a heading where the waves are not striking the beam, which risks capsizing, but are instead taken on the bow or quarter. This distinction was a vital clue for ancient navigators. A long, regular ground swell from the east told a captain that a steady weather system, perhaps the monsoon itself, was active far over the horizon, confirming his chosen route. A sudden cross-chop of local wind waves, however, signaled a nearby squall, a warning to shorten sail immediately. Mastering this wave-reading skill turned the entire ocean into a dynamic chart, its surface patterns revealing stories of distant storms and unseen coastlines long before land appeared. This constant, nuanced observation required a crew at the peak of their awareness, a state that could only be maintained through a ruthlessly efficient system of rest. The ability to read the sea's subtle warnings was useless if the watch on deck was too exhausted to act. A ship's safety ultimately depended on the weary eyes of its crew. For your 28th experiment, you will simulate the relentless rhythm of a multi-day passage, pushing the limits of human attention. Enlist a partner, or simply alternate your own focus in timed sessions to act as the changing watch. Set your model boat on a steady course across the tank under a constant breeze, and begin the cycle. The first watch is sharp and attentive, making minor sail trims and rudder corrections to maintain a perfect line. After a set period, perhaps 10 minutes, the watch changes. The new crew member takes over, their senses perhaps slightly dulled by the monotony of the simulated voyage. This is when you introduce the unexpected. Suddenly shift the fan's direction, creating a sudden wind change that threatens to push the boat into an accidental jibe. Or silently place a small floating obstacle in its path, Time the response. A fresh crew will likely react almost instantly, correcting course with a practiced motion. A fatigued one, however, might hesitate for those critical few seconds, allowing the boat to turn too far or even collide with the obstacle. You are measuring more than reaction time. You are measuring the decay of vigilance. This simple rotation reveals why ancient maritime cultures developed strict watch-keeping traditions, with bells marking the hours and rituals preserving alertness. A single lapse during a long monsoon night, a moment of drowsiness when a squall line appeared, could unravel the careful work of weeks. The ship was a machine, but it was a machine operated by exhausted, hopeful, and fundamentally human hands. Their collective endurance was the final and most fragile component in any successful voyage. This constant demand for alertness extended beyond sight, tuning the crew's ears to the subtle sounds of the sea itself. The ocean's voice carries warnings and welcomes across vast distances. For your 29th experiment, silence your fan and wave machine, and instead place a small, waterproof speaker near your water tank. Play a recording of the sea, one that includes the distinct sounds of distant breakers crashing on a shore, the sharp cries of a seabird colony, and the rising hiss of an approaching squall. Now dim the lights or even close your eyes, forcing yourself to rely entirely on this auditory landscape to guide your model boat. The first time you hear the low, rhythmic roar of surf where you expected only open ocean, the instinct is immediate: turn away. That sound, growing from a faint rumble to a defined crash, tells you a lee shore is dangerously close, even if you cannot see it through a thick fog. A sudden chorus of gulls and terns signals a hidden island or coastal cliff, their cries acting as a living foghorn. The most subtle cue might be a change in the wind's tone, a shift from a steady hum to a higher, frantic whistle, telling you to reef your sails before the gust front hits. Navigating by sound alone is a disorienting but profound skill, forcing you to build a mental map from echoes and vibrations. Ancient sailors honed this sense to a fine edge, understanding that on a dark night or in a dense monsoon fog, their ears could see what their eyes could not. This practice wove their vessels into the living soundscape of the coast and open ocean, turning every murmur of the sea into a potential piece of the navigational puzzle. Such deep environmental awareness was often encoded not just in personal experience, but in the collective memory of the community, passed down through stories and songs that held the wisdom of generations. Generations of sailors carried a library of knowledge not in books, but in simple rhymes passed from father to son. Our 30th and final experiment asks if this cultural inheritance was mere superstition or a compressed form of empirical science. We take a proverb like "red sky at morning," sailors take warning, and subject it to the unforgiving lens of our homemade laboratory. In your wind tunnel, use a colored gel or a safe light source to simulate the reddened sky of dawn, which is caused by sunlight scattering through high-altitude dust and moisture particles. This same atmospheric condition often precedes a low-pressure system, a storm bringer moving in from the west. Now, correlate this artificial red sky with the data from your anemometer and wave tank. Does your logger show a subsequent drop in pressure, a shift in wind direction, and an increase in wave height over the next several hours of simulated time? You are testing the chain of causality embedded in the rhyme. Another saying, "Mackerel skies and mare's tails make tall ships carry low sails," refers to high, wispy cirrocumulus and cirrus clouds that frequently foreshadow a warm front and its associated rain and wind. In your tank, can you replicate the conditions that create these cloud formations, perhaps by introducing a slow, steady influx of warmer, moist air into your system, and then observe the resulting deterioration in sailing conditions for your model? The goal is not to prove every folk saying infallible, but to appreciate the rigorous observation behind them. These proverbs were a decision-making algorithm, a way to package complex weather patterns into an actionable, memorable warning. A captain who heeded red sky at morning might have been reefing his sails hours before the storm clouds even appeared, a preventative action that statistics would later validate. This final experiment beautifully bridges the worlds of story and censor, of rhyme and reason. It reveals that the ancient mariner's mind did not separate cultural wisdom from physical evidence. He lived in a world where they were one and the same, a holistic understanding forged on the open ocean. Having recreated these 30 experiments from the balance of a whole to the truth in a rhyme, we have built a bridge of practical understanding to the past. We have felt the same trade-offs between speed and stability, between risk and reward that governed every decision on a monsoon sea. This journey through backyard tanks and wind tunnels does more than explain history. It allows us to think like a master navigator, to see the wind and water not as chaotic forces, but as a complex, predictable system they learned to dance with through generations of courageous trial and error. Their legacy is not just in the ports they founded or the goods they traded, but in this profound, embodied wisdom, a partnership with the planet that we can only now begin to fully measure and admire. The true genius of monsoon navigation emerges not from any single experiment, but from the powerful patterns that connect them all. Our 30 tests reveal a deeply integrated system, where every choice from hull shape to stowage was part of a grand compromise. The stability of a wide-hulled dhow, proven in our wave tank, was not an isolated fact. It was the essential foundation that allowed its crew to deploy the highly efficient lateen sail we analyzed in the wind tunnel. That sail's ability to harness crosswinds gave the ship options, but it was the deep keel's relentless grip on the water, which we measured against lateral drift, that transformed those options into a straight and purposeful course. Each element supported the others in a delicate balance. The careful distribution of water amphory, which lowered the center of gravity, directly enhanced the sail's power by preventing excessive heel. The crew's skill in reading cloud formations and wave patterns provided the predictive data needed to reef sails before a squall could test the hull's ultimate limits. This was not a collection of separate skills, it was a single, fluid discipline. The ancient mariner's mind constantly synthesized these variables, his decisions flowing from an intuitive understanding of physics that we have only now managed to unpack with our timers and data loggers. Their consistent success across thousands of voyages was no accident. It was the result of a robust, repeatable methodology. Our backyard experiments validate that their art was, in fact, a profound and testable science. They achieved this not by conquering the monsoon, but by weaving their vessels so completely into its fabric that wind, wave, and wood became partners in the journey. This holistic mastery, where environmental awareness and ship design were inseparable, prepared the way for a legacy that would reshape the world. Our journey through these 30 experiments has bridged centuries, transforming abstract history into a tangible reality of wood, wind, and water. We have felt the same physical forces that guided ancient mariners, from the stabilizing grip of a deep keel to the subtle pull of a well-trimmed sail. By recreating their world in our backyards, we have not just learned about their decisions, we have experienced the same trade-offs between speed and stability, between risk and reward. This hands-on exploration reveals their genius not as mythical legend, but as a repeatable, testable science of survival. Their mastery was a profound collaboration with the planet, a dance with the monsoon's rhythm that wove observation, adaptation, and raw courage into the fabric of every voyage. The legacy of these sailors is not locked away in museums. It is waiting in the ripple of water in a tank and the whisper of air in a tunnel. Their secrets become your discoveries, proving that the greatest historical mysteries can be solved with simple tools and an inquisitive mind. We have sailed this investigative voyage together, and now the horizon is yours to explore. Share the stories from your own experiments in the comments below, and subscribe to join our next adventure into the forgotten corners of